Alright, who wants to talk Human Centipede? The Human Centipede final sequence, number 3, is on video on demand. So I was obliged to finish this. And, part of my job as a terrible triple feature presenter is sort of the movie equivalent of a sin eater, in which I take on the burden for you, the good people, who would never, ever want to watch these things, nor should you, really. Human Centipede. These are like the few movies that I will never actually recommend to anyone. I tell people, I, to varying degrees, enjoy these films, but they're not good, technically, and no one ever needs to watch them. Tom Six wrote and directed all 3 of these things, in which the point of the film, to varying degrees, is to make a human centipede, that's the title, by surgically attaching people ass to mouth. Now, as my friends can attest, I am not a fan of butt stuff, really, of any shape or stripe. Which is part of what makes these movies work in terms of horror movie value. It's not scary unless it's something that actually terrifies you. And while I love supernatural horror almost better than anything else, just because I love monsters, they're not going to scare me terribly because I know they don't exist. Or they exist somewhere where I haven't run across them, or I haven't violated their rules. Either way. Stuff like the Human Centipede, or Last House on the Left, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and non-supernatural slasher movies, these are scarier because these could actually happen to you if you're not careful. Careful being a relative term. As evidenced by Ashley and Jenny in the first Human Centipede first sequence, the original, which I would argue, well, not good, it's not a bad movie. These 2 American tourists who are just sort of dumb. I mean, there's dumb American tourists, and then there are these 2 girls who, don't pay attention to the directions to a party they're supposedly going to, get a flat tire, don't know how to change the flat tire, get out of the car after calling for roadside assistance, and wander about in Germany. Which, as Americans, this should, put us on edge at minimum. They wander into the home of Dr. Joseph Heiter, played by the great Dieter Lasser. Despite the fact that he admits to them openly that he hates human beings, they accept drinks from him, water, which is of course roofied, and they fall asleep and wake up in his laboratory where he explains in gruesome detail that he will surgically graft their mouths to their butts, and to another fellow Japanese man, to make the first in what will be a series of human centipedes that will eventually be like a full human centipede. The movie, surprisingly, is not as over the top as you'd think. It's really disgusting and revolting, don't get me wrong, but it could be a lot worse, which we'll get to. Part of why it works for me is it is a kind of a mashup of sorts between 2 different eras of horror movie, because the basic premise, young people ending up in the home of a renegade mad scientist, that's every other 50s horror movie, and those are all fun. Think of the parodies of them, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, when Woody Allen and the girl end up at was it John Carradine's laboratory where he makes the giant boob, or more famously, Rocky Horror Picture Show. This is the same setup as the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where they get a flat tire and they end up at a mad scientist's place. But you take that 50s setup and you add 70s exploitation horror, and you get the Human Centipede, because there's nothing really in the Human Centipede that's more gruesome visually than, say, Last House on the Left or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And so, because you have this weird combination of the 2, it sort of works for me. Again, not something I watch. I think I've seen it twice. Ever. And I don't know that I'm ever going to watch it again. And underlying all of these little mini reviews, you don't need to see it. I'm talking about it for you. Don't worry about it. But if you do, I can lend it to you. Because it was a birthday present. Thanks, Greg and Karen. Now the thing is, Human Centipede the First is not the most gruesome, disgusting thing ever. No. Human Centipede, full sequence, number 2. That is. Because this is disturbing on a level that the Human Centipede the First just didn't attain at all. As it turns out, getting surgically grafted to your best friend's butt is by one of the foremost transplant surgeons in all of Europe not the worst thing that could happen. No, getting your mouth surgically attached to your best friend's butt by a deranged, mental deficient, that's the worst thing. Because, at least Dr. Hyder, he knew medically what he was doing. Martin, played by Lawrence Harvey, doesn't at all. There's a neat linking device in all 3 of these movies where the first movie begins with the ending of the previous movie, which the main character is watching. So the movie opens with Martin watching the end of The Human Centipede, which he is obsessed with and really, really wants to do. Again, mental deficient. He doesn't speak through the whole film. He just makes grunts and laughs, and it's revolting. He is a parking garage attendant who keeps knocking out the people that are using the garage and whisking them away to this abandoned warehouse that he's got, and eventually surgically attaches all of these people to each other. Now, he tries to do it like Dr. Hyder does, but again, not a doctor. Borderline, deficient IQ. He ends up killing, people right off the bat, by accident. So he improvises and starts stapling people to themselves and just yanking out their knee tendons, and God damn it, I hate that movie so much. It's so terrible. Disgusting. And, there's just all these peripheral things that happen. There's, implied child abuse, a horrible mother, an actual, giant pet centipede, childbirth, just, fuck Human Centipede 2. I almost don't want to lend it to Martin's girlfriend, my friend Martin. She requested it, and so I'm obliged. So, sorry, Martin. Martin in real life, not Martin in the movie. Human Centipede 2. It's just gross. It's just gross through the whole thing, and it hits every little thing I don't like about the human body in this movie. So, credit where credit's due. Tom Six really outdid himself with the second one. So as you can understand, my expectations for Human Centipede 3 were pretty high in terms of this could be the worst thing ever. Not the least of which the reason is Tom Six flat out said Human Centipede 3 is going to make Human Centipede 2 look like My Little Pony. Mercifully, it didn't, because, God, I can't even imagine what that movie would look like. It plays more like a bad trauma movie, because in lieu of spectacle, they add social commentary on America. Unfortunately, the commentary is 5 years too late for it to be really that pertinent to the current national debate. Interestingly, we get both Dieter Losser and Lawrence Harvey are playing the main characters, again, the bad guys. One of the more disturbing things throughout the movie is that Lawrence Harvey speaks, and he speaks fine. There's nothing actually wrong with him in real life. He's just an actor. And even worse, he's doing a Southern American accent through the whole thing. Dieter Losser is basically playing what would have happened if Hunter S. Thompson lived another 50 years and did all the drugs and was German. It's sort of hilarious. I really like watching him through the whole movie because he is just chewing all of the scenery and going nuts with it. I don't think Tom Six told him no even once throughout this whole movie. It's incredible. It takes place in a prison, and Lawrence Harvey's character's he is the accountant and assistant to the warden, and his big plan to deal with overcrowding and skyrocketing prison costs is to attach all the prisoners together as a human centipede. Because this would cut down on violence, because they couldn't really move. It would be cheaper to feed, and give them vitamin injections in lieu of, real food. And, man, prison might actually finally be a deterrent. I mean, if your option is steal that money and maybe get away with it, or possibly end up in a human centipede, I'm just going to do without. But that's just me. Unfortunately, you don't really see the human centipede a lot. Like, it was very built up in the trailer, and you saw that promo pic of the whole giant thing, which is supposed to be like 2,000 prisoners strung together. And you only see it basically for those two shots. It's most of it is just Dieter Lasser running around screaming at the top of his lungs, which I'm almost tempted to watch it on DVD just so I could get subtitles for it. Maybe it'll end up on Netflix. Jesus, I don't want to watch it again. Honestly, the grosser parts of the movie don't involve the human centipede, mainly because there can't be anything grosser involving the human centipede itself after number 2, which I think 6 knew. Tom Six actually appears as himself in the movie because the human centipede movies are movies within the universe of the 3rd film. And he explains that, oh yeah, totally medically accurate. Ugh, it's ridiculous. But mercifully wasn't nearly as disgusting as I had prepared myself for, so it was kind of, expectation may have helped me out a bit, so I was able to survive. So now, I have been to the top of Gross Out Mountain and watched all 3 Human Centipede films, and if you're a normal human being, you probably haven't watched any of them, and nor should you. But if you need to, I can lend them to you. Ugh, God. And it's important to note that, of course, all 3, despite being the most revolting things ever, have a higher Rotten Tomatoes rating than Vibes, the brilliant film about psychic Jeff Goldblum and psychic Cyndi Lauper running around in South America. Good job, film critics. I'll see you guys next week with what I promise will be a less disgusting subject matter for the triple feature. See you then!